please mute yourself. And if you have any questions for any of the panelists or for Linda Burns, please use the chat feature below. Well, welcome to our 10th annual Women's History Program. Because of the coronavirus, we are having the event by Zoom. Instead of March, which is Women's History Month, we are having it today, August 15th, 2020. This is fortuitous because we are celebrating the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, which was 3 days later on August 18th, 1920, giving women the right to vote in the United States. To commemorate this important occasion, we have invited 7 very accomplished women in public service, representing our local, state, and federal governments. First, we will have Linda Burns, president of the Rockland chapter of the League of Women Voters, will give us a brief history of the women's suffrage movement in the U.S. Linda? Linda Burns?
Is she having trouble getting on?
I think so.
Okay, hold on.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, we could. Very good.
Okay. The women's suffrage movement was a long fight to win the right to vote from the 1840s till 1920. And I'm going to try to summarize it in 5 or 6 minutes. But I guess you've all been watching Suffrage Forward and the Historical Society's local program on the struggle in Rockland. So I am going to stick more with the national. It took activists and reformers nearly 100 years to win that right to vote. But on August 18th, 1920, the amendment was finally ratified. The campaign began in earnest excuse me, in the decades before the Civil War. Most states had extended the franchise to all white men. Originally, it was only property owners when our forefathers wrote the Constitution. But by the 30s, all white men were allowed to vote. And all sorts of reform groups were proliferating across the country: temperance, religious movements, moral societies, slavery organizations, and women played an important part in this, but we couldn't vote. In the meanwhile, women were trying to mobilize in many groups. Susan B. Anthony and other women said voting was not prohibited by the Constitution, and they went to vote, and they were jailed as a result. So clearly what was enforced was women could not vote. In 1848, a group of abolitionist activists, mostly women, but some men, gathered in Seneca Falls, New York, and there is a museum up there. Some of you may have visited it, and they formed a declaration of sentiments. I won't bore you with the content, but obviously it said that women, as well as men, could vote. We know the names: Susan B. Anthony, Lucy Stone. We know the organizations: the National American Women's Suffrage Association, Elizabeth Cady Stanton. But what shocks me as a white woman, and it is so difficult to understand, that white women would turn against Black women to gain support for the vote. And the more I read about it, how Black women fought for suffrage, had to form their own groups. They were discriminated against by Susan B. Anthony and other leaders, other white leaders that were working for suffrage. There are names that every day I find another name, but of course we've all heard of Ida Wells and Madam C.J. Walker. that Frances Pratt has spoken about. But today, this is tomorrow's Times, how American women won the vote. There are names in here that I did not even know. I mean, I knew Ida Wells, but I didn't know Nanny Helen Burroughs. And these were Black women that worked as hard for the vote as white women. Yet in a parade in 1913, they marched in the back of white women. So this is really a blight on the movement. So I just wanted to put that in context. Anyway, the National American Women's Suffrage Association merged with the other groups, and Elizabeth Cady Stanton was the organization's first president. The reason for excluding Black women seemed to be white Southern men would not extend the right to vote if the vote was diluted by what they called colored women. Eventually, the groups merged, and there were two fractions in the teens, the 19s, and one was the militant fraction, headed by Alice Paul. This is the group that chained themselves to the White House, had a hunger strikes, were jailed. They said they were fed vermin in the jail. And then there was the other group, Carrie Chapman Catt, who was our foremother, formed the League of Women Voters. She said that we can't be militant. We've got to go all over the country and focus on those regions that were against the vote. And apparently that worked. Now I have a cute story about the deciding vote. There were 48 states in 1919, in 1920. So we needed 36 to ratify the amendment. 35 had ratified it, and Tennessee was the last state. And it had passed one House of Legislature, and in the other one it was tied 48-48. And Harry Byrne spelled his name wrong with a U, I spell mine with an E, was a 24-year-old representative, the youngest in the state. And he wore a red boutonniere, which was anti-women's suffrage. And then he got up right before the vote, or at the vote, and he voted aye. And the reason he gave was a letter from his mother, who said, "Hurrah, vote for suffrage. Don't keep them in doubt. Be a good boy and help Mrs. Catt put the rat in ratification." So obviously he got up the next day and explained how good boys listen to their mother. And that was the 36th state that ratified the amendment. Now, of course, I've left out a lot of information, and I hope you will watch a lot of the programs, or certainly read some of the articles in tomorrow's Times. I can't believe I'm pushing the Times, but I've been reading all morning, and these have information that hasn't been in other publications. But I'm anxious to get to the speakers, so that's it for me. Thanks for listening.
Well, thank you, Linda Burns. It was very informative. And actually, Rockland Journal News has a whole section today about women's suffrage. Yeah.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to be asking each panelist 4 questions that they will address all at once. They are as follows. What motivated you to pursue a career in public service? What obstacles, if any, did you encounter, and how did you overcome them? What would you consider your greatest accomplishment? And what advice would you give to women who want to pursue a career in public service or government? We will have a Q&A session after the panelists speak, and we are asking the audience to use the chat feature to ask the panelists questions. You can do it before the Q&A session. I would like to introduce our first panelist, the Honorable Nita Lowey. Nita Lowey was elected to the House of Representatives in 1988, where she represents parts of Westchester and Rockland County. She had served 16 terms in the House, where she has taken leadership roles on many public policy issues: educational opportunities, healthcare quality, biomedical research, and environmental issues. She is presently chair of the powerful House Appropriations Committee. Ms. Lowey is now working tirelessly to help those most affected by the coronavirus and the resulting economic fallout. Yes, Nita Lowey.
Am I on?
Yes, you are.
Okay. First of all, thank you for bringing us together. It's such a pleasure for me to see so many good friends and activists and people who every day make sure they do the right thing. So thank you for asking me to be here. Okay. So what motivated me to pursue a career in government? First of all, I should say, even before I ran for Congress, and when I visit schools, I tell this to kids, there are some people who see a problem and just move on. And there's nothing wrong with people who go off and play tennis and swim and golf. But there are many of us who see a problem and we say, we have to do something about it. And that was the way my mother was, active in almost every organization in the Bronx, where I grew up near the Yankee Stadium. And I learned from her that we have a responsibility to make this a better world. And that's really how I got started, and it's how many of my colleagues. Now, when I got to the Congress, what were my legislative priorities? I ran on cleaning up Long Island Sound. I earned a reputation as one, if not the most ardent champion of a woman's right to choose in my tenure. Equity in women's health research, quality education. Of course, that was a priority ever since I was PTA president of all the schools that my kids went to. Next question you asked me, what are the obstacles, if any, did you encounter? Well, one, working to recover and rebuild after September 11th and again after Superstorm Sandy's. I had to work to get the money for New York, and we were successful. Anita Hill hearings. I was with a group of about 7 women. We stormed the Senate in 1991 to insist that Anita Hill be allowed to testify in Clarence Thomas's nomination hearings. We were just fighting for what was right at the time, and nearly 30 years later, that is seen as a pivotal moment in the fight for women's rights and equality. I'm sure if I knew then what I know now, I might have taken some different votes or positions along the way. But I generally don't dwell on regrets. I tend to focus on the future and how to make progress on the next goal. Now, the next question you asked me, what was my greatest accomplishment? Well, I'm very proud of many things, but becoming chair, the first woman to chair the Appropriations Committee, breaking that glass ceiling for women. And I previously broke a glass ceiling in becoming the first woman to chair the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee in 2001 and 2002. And what were some of the bills that I thought was so critical and I'm proud of? 0.08, drunk driving standard. Food allergy labeling. Believe it or not, people with food allergies used to go into a store until I got this passed with the main 8 food allergies to be disclosed in plain language on packages. This didn't always exist, so I'm proud of that, and I made it a bipartisan effort. The NIH investment in getting those investments up. Gender equity in research. They didn't do research on women as well as men for a long time, and we fought for that. Record funding and a U.S. strategy for basic education, especially for girls around the world. I remember going up to the mountains in Pakistan and visiting a girls' school, and they were so beautiful, and I was so proud, and they were all dressed in white, and all they wanted was a computer, and we managed to get them computers. And of course, women's health funding at home and abroad, Title X, international family planning, champion foreign aid to Israel as chair and ranking member of the House Appropriations Subcommittee on State and Foreign Operations, maintaining bipartisan congressional support for a 2-state solution, a letter to President Obama on a commitment to 2-state solution that I got done with Kay Granger, a Republican, and 394 members in April 2016. And one of the last things I'm working on now is introducing the Middle East Partnership for Peace Act. I'm working very hard to get this to pass before I leave, to build a foundation for peaceful coexistence between Israelis and Palestinians, and for a sustainable 2-state solution. Founding and co-chairing the House Bipartisan Task Force for Combating Anti-Semitism, the Homeland Security Caucus, millions of dollars for first responders and nonprofits to increase the security and safety of our communities. Education. Oh, I've been fighting for education every level from preschool and Head Start through higher education, record levels of support to improve access and quality. And then you asked me to respond, what advice would I give to other women who would like to pursue a career in government? Number one, I am so inspired by this freshman class of women in Congress who bring new voices and perspectives to the table. When I came to Congress in 1989, there were only 31 women in the legislative branch. Today, there are 127. We need more women in positions of power to advance our important issues, including paid medical leave, paid equity, women workplace rights. And with their leadership, we will honor those women of a century ago who fought for our rights, continue to break glass ceilings, make progress towards ensuring equal rights for all women. It is just as inspiring to see so many young people speaking up and fighting for each other in the face of racism and bigotry. And as you and I know, and all the women here today, progress is achieved when you use your voice and advocate, not just for yourselves, but for all of your neighbors as well. So I think that's it. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to say a few words. And I know I have to go on to another commitment. And I think, are you asking any questions now, or are we waiting until later?
Well, if there is somebody who really wants to ask a question, you certainly could. But you can see it in the chat feature. Yes. Doria, is there any way they could do that?
Well,
Can I make a comment?
But
if anyone has any comments or questions for her before she goes, that would be fine.
This is Constance Frazier. I do have a
Hi, how are you, lady?
I am just fabulous, just like you. I just wanted to say to you in good company, I have loved you forever.
Oh.
I have not met anyone that was as caring about our kids. When I called you on the phone and I said, Nita, I need to see you about East Ramapo. You said, okay, come and see me. I'll be in Washington, D.C. So I got on the train and I brought some friends with me and colleagues. And you asked me one question when we were having lunch. You said, what is it that I can do to help East Ramapo? I said, get Hank Greenberg and the commissioner to come down to your office. And you did. And that was the very beginning of the development of a dialogue that led to a plan that I thought was pretty darn good. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all you have done. And I really am going to miss you.
Oh, I'm sure I will see you, Connie. And I must say, after 32 years, it's time, right?
I agree.
But thank you for your kind words. I appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you for all you have done. Your contributions have been so varied and remarkable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nita Lowey.
Thank you very, very much. And I'm sorry I can't stay. If anybody has another question, I guess they don't. So
I have
go
something.
on.
May I say something before you leave?
Oh, Harriet, you can always say something. Say, when I first came to Rockland County, Harriet Cornell, my longtime friend, hosted me with all the great women and men in the district. And Harriet has been a role model to me my entire career. Thank you. Of course you can say something.
Well, I do want to say what an inspiration you have been for all of us here in terms of, you know, you always had an office here. You always called when I was chair of the legislature. You kept in touch to find out what Rockland might need. You have been absolutely wonderful. And I want the people in the audience to know that you didn't start your political career when you went to Congress, that you had actually worked for Governor Mario Cuomo and doing a lot here in the state. And that was so very, very important. And you've been, we're going to miss you so, so much. And I hope you're going to stay connected with us in whatever it is that your next career will take you to. But you've been wonderful, Nita, really always so caring about the county and doing such a great job. And I have to tell you that I think very often of the picture that you talked about with the 7 women running up the steps of the Capitol. And that stays with me all the time when I think about how important it is to have women in public office. So thank you so very much.
Harriet, I want to thank you. And I just want to say that my first job was when I was president of the PTA at PS 178 in Queen. No, maybe before that. I was president of my class at the Bronx High School of Science. So we all began, and again, I just want to say to all who were listening, to me, the most important thing is understand the issues in your community, the nation, the world, and we all have to do our part and do the best we can. And the women who are here today are all leaders. And of course, Harriet and I have known each other forever. And I thank you again, Connie, for your beautiful comments. So thank you again. And I don't want to take up any more time because I know there are other people who are going to speak. But thank you for inviting me to be part of this.
Thank you, Nita, and thank you for inspiring me.
Oh, look who's there. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Yes.
See
Thank you very
again.
much
Thank
for
you.
your services.
Yes.
Yes.
The next person I'm going to introduce is Harriet Cornell. Harriet Cornell was the first woman county legislator when she was elected in 1984. She served for 8 years as chair, and Ms. Cornell brought a woman's perspective and aspirations in forming public policies. Harriet.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the League and to the AAUW for hosting this wonderful panel. I'm really anxious to hear from everybody who's here today on the panel. So how did I get into politics? I didn't actually have a choice. My Swarthmore College professor was running in a Democratic primary for Congress in Pennsylvania, and he, quote, invited his students to go door to door campaigning in Chester, Pennsylvania. It was an invitation we couldn't really refuse. Chester was a very depressed area, and I was really nervous about going door to door and doing something that I'd never done before, especially in that particular area. But at almost every door, my team partner and I were invited in, taken into a small parlor that obviously was only used for special occasions. We were given refreshments to drink, and the family members sat down and they listened very carefully to what we had to say about the candidate. I learned so much from that experience. I've never really forgotten it, because it's not what people own in worldly goods. It's the content of the character that counts. And those people had character, and they were friendly and inviting. And I have carried that in my mind for my entire career. My professor didn't win, but there was a happy ending because I married my team partner, Martin Cornell, the following year. So that turned out very well. Then we moved to Ann Arbor, Michigan after marriage. My husband was in law school and I got involved in Democratic Party politics, was a precinct captain. Women led the Democratic Party in both the city of Ann Arbor and the county of Washtenaw, which was in the state of Michigan. When we moved to Rockland County, it was so apparent to me how far ahead those communities were in having women in leadership roles. It was not that way when we arrived in Rockland County initially. I'm trying to think of the year. It's like 1958, maybe. But we were also, my husband and I were also the founders of the Young Democrats of Clarkstown. I used to write and direct musical shows for fundraisers. And I later became chair of the party's women's division, which kind of tells you where it was, where the party was with regard to women in those years. But in 1972, I was elected to chair the Rockland County Democratic Committee. So in terms of answering the questions about most significant accomplishments, my first term as a legislator, I started in January of 1984. I was not actually the first woman to serve on the legislature, but the year that I entered, I was the only woman, and there were 16 men. There were 17 legislators at that time. And what I did was I wrote legislation to create a commission on women's issues to enable members of the public to participate in the formation of public policy. So 85 women and 2 men joined that commission. The legislators laughed about it. They said, Harriet's going to need Yankee Stadium to hold meetings. But it was no laughing matter when each of the committees we established actually changed the face of Rockland in many ways. We held hearings on issues of major concern, leading to many, many firsts, and I'm not going to go through all of them. I'll just mention a couple. After holding hearings on the need for affordable housing, the Rockland Housing Action Coalition was formed in 1987, which to this day develops affordable rental and for sale housing by obtaining grants from federal, state, and local governments to reduce construction costs so low income families can afford to rent or purchase new housing. We also held probably the only hearings in the state at the beginning of the HIV/AIDS crisis. And when we started the hearings, that resulted immediately in the then county executive, John Grant, opening a county government clinic dedicated to serving those who were suffering from AIDS or trying to prevent AIDS. There were many more accomplishments that the Women's Commission did, and I'm not going to go into them now. But as chair of the Legislative Committee on the Arts, I am proud to say that early on, we were able to pass a law that created the only Arts in Public Places program, and we're the only county in the state to this date, except for the city of New York and its boroughs, that have a program to integrate art into construction projects by county government. And so there are artworks throughout Rockland in or near government property. So there's a wonderful website. I invite everybody to go to the county website and look for Arts in Public Places, and you'll be able to see where all the art is, and then you can go with your family and see the artworks up close and personal. I would say that probably the most significant of the things that I was involved with and led was the formation of Rockland 21C, we call it. Family, school, and community coming together to ensure that all Rockland children reach optimal development. I initiated and chaired that effort for 22 years, during which family resource centers were created in 46 of the county's public schools throughout Rockland, and a home visiting program was established where parents were shown how to read to their toddlers, and the home visitor came for 2 years. Those children who have had that benefit are entering school at the same or greater level than their more affluent peers. Last year, 2019, the New York State Department of Education gave 21C a 5-year contract to provide technical assistance to 372 school districts in New York State, a territory that starts at the Canadian border, comes all the way down to Rockland, through Westchester and out to Long Island. That's about, well, it's probably more than a third of the school districts in the state. We provide technical assistance to those school districts so they too can become what's known as community schools, such as we have in Rockland. The only other 2 places that receive contracts are Fordham University and SUNY Binghamton. So that I think is a major step forward for our county. So in terms of the obstacles encountered and how did I overcome them, I think it's probably safe to say that, when you work for a large corporation or in the field of education or in many other fields as well as politics, there can be stumbling blocks, often arising from people with sharp elbows seeking power or position. In the early days of my political involvement in Rockland, I was really blessed with a very wise and supportive husband who helped me think through how best to handle difficult situations, and he saved me from many potential missteps. I learned that it was best to stay cool and take the time to think through the issue, and that has helped me throughout my career. What a difference that has made. There was a shocking event that occurred to me when I think it was sometime in the early 70s. I had been very active in the Democratic Party in Rockland and also attended state Democratic meetings. And the State Democratic Committee decided to increase the number of its vice chairs to 4, 2 men and 2 women. So I threw my hat in the ring and I really campaigned energetically. I even drove up to Albany to meet with the Democratic Party chair, who was a legendary person. In any event, when the day of the vote came to pass, it was in New York City. And as they were just finishing up calling out, all the votes were called out as people would vote, and a lot of people were keeping track. And just as it was ending, it appeared that I was one of the two women who had the most votes, the second most votes. However, the Long Island contingent, who had a candidate who didn't make that into the second slot, the contingent actually pulled a kind of a, what would you call it? They used a parliamentary maneuver before the final vote was called. And by doing that, they then were able to withdraw the votes they had given to me, as well as their own Long Island candidate. They went through and they took their vote away from me, and that enabled their candidate to win. I almost passed out. It was just so shocking to me. But I pulled myself together, and about the next year, with a lot of Rockland support, I ran and was elected for County Democratic Chairwoman, the first woman to be so elected. In terms of advice given to women who might be interested in seeking public office, a lot of research has been done over the past years. I actually chaired what was known as the Eleanor Roosevelt Legacy Committee, which exists to help women in the state of New York run for office. And the research that we had done at Eleanor Roosevelt Legacy showed that women thought they didn't know enough, that they needed to know more, they needed to be more prepared before they could run for office, while male candidates had no such compunctions. They would just jump into races and run for office. What made a difference for women, we found out, was being asked to run for a public office, and particularly by someone they respected. Although I had been active politically for decades, I had not thought of running for public office until I was asked by a party official. I think it's clear from the number of women who Nita was talking about, and who we all know from reading the newspapers, that many women are no longer hesitant about stepping forward to run for office, and that's wonderful. My advice to women is to recognize that your experiences, your struggles, your interests are what you bring to public life. Childcare, healthcare, breast cancer, divorce, care for elderly parents, lack of pay parity, all of the things that you've had to deal with strike a chord with others. Holding elected office gives you the opportunity to use your life experiences to make life better for your community, your state, and your nation. Eleanor Roosevelt, who had a difficult life as a child and was a very shy young woman, said it best, and I quote, "You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience where you look fear in the face. You must do the thing you think you cannot do." That was the end of her quote. She was afraid of speaking in public, and so too was I. But here I am. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Harriet Cornell, and that was very inspiring.
Thank you.
Next is Larraine Feiden. As a senior managing partner of Feiden Law Firm, she specializes in women's rights and gender equality. She is serving her second term as president of the Rockland County Women's Bar Association. Larraine?
Hello, good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me. I'm honored. Everybody can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. Thank you for that gracious introduction. I have 34 years of experience as a litigator. I've been an active member of the Clarkstown community since I moved here in 1993. I am currently a partner in Feiden Law Firm with my husband, Scott. I'm also an assistant county attorney. I was appointed to that position in 2015. And I work hard every day to defend the county against lawsuits, to protect the safety of the public. I defend the county against lawsuits, and I also bring lawsuits in the name of the county to combat prostitution, human trafficking, illegal dumping, and building code violations. Also, the other women were talking about PTA, and that's where I cut my teeth also, that being extremely political, as anyone who's been involved in PTA knows. My kids went through the Clarkstown school system. I have 2 that went to New City Elementary and 2 that went to Wood Glen. They all went to Festa and Clarkstown North. I'm the mother of 4 adult children. My youngest is in college, and my oldest is a New York City public school teacher, and she just made me a grandmother. So I've been promoted to grandmother. While on PTA in Clarkstown, I led a successful initiative to reduce class size in the Clarkstown elementary schools. And I also was involved, I also spearheaded, I should say, a grassroots movement to obtain funding for the construction of a state-of-the-art swimming pool, which is now used by the Clarkstown school swimming and diving teams and is open to the public for swimming classes and open sessions. Last year, I ran for Clarkstown Justice Court judge. Sadly, I did not win. I came very close. I ran against 2 male incumbents, but that has not made me shy away from politics at all. I will probably run for something in the future. I am a committed public servant, and I would say that my greatest accomplishment is mentoring other young lawyers. As was introduced, I just finished my 2nd elected term as president of the Rockland County Women's Bar Association, and we always give a scholarship every year on Law Day, which is May 1st of every year. And I've been mentoring young, aspiring women attorneys for years, and that's probably what gives me the greatest joy. I want to thank all the accomplished women on this panel. Thank you to the hosts of today's panel. And while we celebrate the centennial anniversary of the 19th Amendment, it was a huge accomplishment. I'm so proud of the many generations of women who have advocated for improved conditions and equality for all, and who paved the way for this generation, so that I can say to you today that we are closer than ever before to eradicating inequality in the workplace. But we have serious work to do. We need to revive the Equal Rights Amendment. To be sure, there are state and federal statutes prohibiting sex and other marginalized community discrimination, but they can be repealed or narrowly construed. The recent LGBTQ ruling is fabulous, the one that came out of the Supreme Court of the United States. But Supreme Court decisions can be overturned by future courts or construed in unintended ways. A Supreme Court decision is not a constitutional amendment. As we know, because 100 years ago we had to pass the amendment allowing us to vote. Some rights are too fundamental to a just society to be left to the vagaries of shifting courts and legislatures. And certainly the rights of women to equality under the law are among these rights. We ought not to keep fighting case by case and bill by bill. Laws can be overturned. which is why we need to make equal stature a fundamental tenet of our society. All the opportunities women have fought so hard for must be enshrined in our Constitution. Our Constitution, the most basic law, must be amended. Interestingly, 80% of Americans think women have equal rights under the Constitution. We do not. And a constitutional amendment is the only guarantee. We need to pursue ratification of the amendment. And that's my next project, and I hope that you are all on board. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Larraine.
You're welcome.
It was very inspiring. Constance Frazier. Constance Frazier is presently the head of the Rockland Human Services Commission. She was appointed by Ed Day in 2013, but most of her career was in educational leadership and administration. She was a teacher, principal, acting and assistant superintendent of schools in the tri-state area. Ms. Frazier was named one of the top 100 executive educators in the U.S. Using her administrative skills and her varied experience as advocate for children, as commissioner, Ms. Frazier dedicates herself to investigating discriminatory practices and adopting long-term strategies to combat hate crimes in Rockland County.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Fabulous. First of all, let me say good afternoon to Harriet and to Ellen, and importantly to Linda Burns. If it was not for her, I don't think I would be on this panel because I know her and I know she recommended me. Harriet, I want to say to you, thank you so very much. The past 3 years when I was appointed as the Commissioner of Human Rights, it seems to me that women always don't know that they have to support one another. Harriet has always been there for me. And many of you, she's been there for you. So I want to say kudos to you and thank you. What motivated me to pursue a career in public service? I think it emanates from my home. As a child, I played teacher all the time with kids in my neighborhood. So it was naturally assumed that I would go on to teach, and I did. Fortunately, I was able to work in Nanuet, and my mother said, you have two choices. You can go to Nanuet or Mamaroneck, and I don't think Mamaroneck is ready for you, so you better go to Nanuet. And I did, and what a fabulous start. You know, the way you start is the way you finish, and when you open your mouth, you see your brains. I learned a lot about how to work with people and how to engage and make sure that kids get an equitable education, especially females. I don't really think I pursued a career in public service per se. I was getting my hair done one day and I got a call from the county executive and he said, can you come and see me? And I said, no. He said, why not? I said, because I'm getting my hair done. He said, well, how long is that going to take you? I said, you never ask a woman how long it's going to take them to get their hair or their nails done. So I made my way over to his office, and it was interesting because he had asked me for the recommendation of names of people that could serve as a human rights commissioner. And I gave him two names. And he was very interesting because he said to me, well, you know, the two names you gave me, the first one I interviewed, and I did interview the second. I said, what happened? He said, he said, the first one said he couldn't do it. He had the skills and the ability. But the other one, he said, I didn't think he was a good fit. He said, but we know who is. And I fell right up into the pit. I said, who? He said, you. So that's how I ended up with the job as Human Rights Commission. And thanks to Harriet and her colleagues, they supported the recommendation 17-0 for me to become the next Commissioner of Human Rights. This is not an easy job because everybody in this county, everybody in this country, everybody in the state deserves to have human rights every single day they breathe. And right now, our human rights is in serious jeopardy. When you look at the quality of our educational systems, you have to shake your head and wonder, what is going on? Will our kids be ensured moving further and moving into the future to have a quality education? Quality meaning optimal, and that's very, very important. Everything we do, every place we go, You have to have a command of the language. You have to be able to write it. And above all, you must be able to speak it. And through the Human Rights Commission, we're trying to rebrand it, and we're trying to make sure that everybody in Rockland has a fair shot. We have what we call a diversity challenge. In Rockland, we're the smallest county in the state. We're the most diverse. And I've often said diversity must be and should be our strength. But right now it is not. And we're trying our very best with Linda's help, as well as 10 other people, to make that become a reality. So you're going to be hearing and seeing more about us. We're in the process now of developing a campaign so that people know that we are available for housing complaints. The people know we're available to take employment complaints, and that something will be done about it. What obstacles did I encounter? Most of the obstacles I've encountered in education, there was one in particular that comes to mind, and Dr. Jeanette Edlow was on, so she can appreciate exactly where I'm coming from, because she and I went to Columbia. We were in the doctoral program together. In 1973, we had a terrible accident in Nyack, and you may have remembered or recalled what happened. And there was a gentleman that was on the Nyack Board of Ed whose son was killed. And I was called, I think it was Leonard Cook, if I'm not mistaken, to at least be considered for a person to fill in on an interim basis. I really didn't want to do it. And I have to be honest with you, I was trying to get a second master's degree. I was teaching at the time in Yonkers, and I was kind of tapped out. I was only getting like 4 hours of sleep a night. But he said to me in my house, you need to get back to your community. And the reason why I mention that is so critical for our young people now who are coming through to not leave Rockland, but to come and stay in Rockland, especially after they get out of college. And that's why we have to make housing affordable, because we don't really have much housing for them that is affordable. But to make a long story short, when I was standing in the foyer of the central office building, a gentleman came up, and I'm being nice about it, and he said to me, he said, we're not having any niggers on the Nyack Board of Ed, and spit on my face. I took the Kleenex out of my purse, and I was really shaken by that. I was kind of young, but I was smart enough to know that that Kleenex with that spit would serve somebody a long time. So I called my cousin, who was a police officer at the time on the Nyack Police Department, Waverly Brown. You may have known about him. He was killed in the Brinks in 1981. He came to the central office. He said, Connie, what do you want me to do? You want me to arrest him? I said, no. I want you to find out who he is. I want you to find out where he lives, and I want you to find out how much money he has in the bank. Rather than sue him, what I did, and that was blatant racism. That was really my first confrontation with it. But I'm really proud, and I look back now on how I handle it. I could have gone off the handle. I mean, somebody spits on you, and you're not used to that. That's something that's just out of character. But I kept that Kleenex with that spit for 20 years. And I'm proud to tell you there were youngsters in Nyack that got scholarship money. It was done very quietly, but they got scholarship money if they wanted to go on to school. I've been looking for somebody to spit on me ever since so that I can get some scholarship money. No, I'm just kidding. Having said that, that really shook me quite a bit. But I will tell you that that formed an infrastructure for me to look at racism through a different lens. And when people see you, they don't necessarily see you because you're black, green, or orange. They see you because you have some skills and you can contribute to whatever it is you're trying to do to make it better. And I've always had that ideology, and that was instilled as one of my values by my mom, who was a single parent and a registered nurse. What do you consider your greatest accomplishment? That's pretty tough for me, but and when I think back, I have been in 9 different school districts, and I have been extremely well trained by the best and the brightest. And I've tried to make that work for kids that look like me, as well as kids that don't look like me. If you were in my class and I was teaching, and Ellen can appreciate this because she was a teacher in East Ramapo, I didn't care, you belonged to me. And whatever I had, I shared it with you, whether it be academics, I don't care what it was, I shared it with you because I felt it was very, very important. When I became an administrator as an elementary principal, middle school administrator, a high school principal, that was my most challenging job because you're dealing with all kinds of personalities and you're dealing with kids that think they know more than you do. And the word in the street was, if CF comes into the building with pointed-toed shoes on, someone is going to be suspended today. I didn't know that until I left the building, by the way. If I had on round-toed shoes, that meant you were okay. To make a long story short, when I became an assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction for the first time, and I did that in 3 different districts, I really began to learn a lot about the course of study and what it meant to learn to alter and change your behavior to perceive of knowledge. To me, that was really a classic. One of my greatest achievements for me was the opening of PS 17 on my watch as an associate superintendent in Jersey City. And that was a big deal. It was a $33 million edifice that was open for children to get a really good education, brand new everything. And I made myself a promise. Once I did that, I was going to leave the district and move on. And I've always done that. I ended up in Orange, New Jersey as an assistant superintendent, and then I became an interim superintendent. And I really got a chance to see all of the things that you want to implement in the school system. You know, it takes a 12-year cycle, because when you run that cycle, what happens is you won't know what's going on until you get to 12th grade. Because once the kids come in kindergarten and then first all the way through, the cycle takes 12 years. So once I completed everything and I was sure all the master plans that we had put in place, then I decided it was time for me to retire. What advice would I give to another woman who would like to pursue a career in government? I've reached out, and you know what, young people will, if you model for them, they will come. If you reach out to them, they will come. I just finished working with an intern. Her name is Jenna Nazario. Very proud of her. She just got her master's from Chapel Hill in North Carolina, and she's smart. Now, at the end of the day, what can make a difference is the fact that you really are committed and that you really care. And what we have to do more and more every day is let the youngsters know, and especially the young people, that we really care. God loved the Board of Regents. They're going to have to operate totally differently. And Ellen, I think you'll attest to that. I think Betty is now in charge of she's the interim commissioner for New York State, so I'm told. She was the head of the Board of Regents, and we are missing Judith Johnson terribly. She had such an impact on Rockland, and she was from here. And you could always talk to her. She was so smart, but she shared her brilliance with all of us. And she often would call me and she'd say, "What do you think, CF? What do you think?" And I would tell her, I said, "I think we need to work it. I think we need to do the best we can by any means necessary." And at the end of the day, I've always thought, to whom much is given, much is required. And for me, I've always tried to leave it better than I found it. Thank you so much for inviting me. This was an auspicious occasion for me, and I appreciate it so much.
Thank you, Constance. I appreciate what you told us. Ellen Jaffee. Ellen Jaffee, as the state assemblywoman for the 96th Assembly District in Rockland, she works to improve the lives of women, children, families, and older adults, and to ensure high quality, affordable childcare and good early childhood education.
It's not.
Thank you. What is it?
What is squash pudding?
Okay, thank you. Have a good day.
Ellen Jaffee?
I did this. You hear me now?
Yes, yes. Oh no, I can't hear her.
Her mic is off.
Yeah.
Ooh, Ellen's mic is off.
Yeah.
All right, do you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh gosh, I thought I was, all right. This is 97th Assembly District.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, 97th, okay.
97th Assembly District. And hi, everyone. And this is such an inspiring afternoon. So many extraordinary women coming together. And you know, the leadership of women is essential. It really does make a difference. And we need to have more women seeking office. And we have to encourage our teenagers. Many of the young teenagers come to me and they talk about the possibility, and I encourage them, and they work in my office, and you know, part-time, and they volunteer. It's very, very important. But thank you all so much. And I started many years ago. There was some things going on. I was teaching. I was teaching for years in special education. I taught resource room, and there was a time when it really became very important to discuss issues in the community where there were a real problem in terms of local village of Suffern, and some of the things that were going on in terms of that I found concerning in terms of environment, and there wasn't, and I went to speak, and there weren't enough youth programs, and I went to speak to some of the leaders in the village of Suffern and talked about why not put together some programs so you could do youth programs. And they said okay, they were going to do it, and then somebody suggested to me, why don't you run for office, because then you're going to be there, you can get it done. So I said, I'd give it a shot. I'd see how that might be an interesting experience. I was still teaching, and I did run for village trustee in Suffern. Very frankly, I thought I could speak about the issue, about moving forward to assure that we have youth programs so that we can keep them engaged after school, and assure that they have opportunities to get involved in some very interesting activities. And I didn't think I was going to win, but I did, and ran the campaign and won. And I was a village trustee, and I was able to work together with the mayor and put together youth programs. And that was really a wonderful beginning, because they have continued those programs. And I do follow up every couple of years just to make sure that they need support, if they need some assistance, that to assure that it would continue to progress in terms of the youth programs in the village. And it really has been something very, very positive. And then after I was a village trustee for a couple of years, some friends came over and said, well, the county legislator is retiring, why don't you run for county legislator? And so I said, all right, I'll try. And I ran for county legislator, and I won. I was still teaching that whole time. I was still teaching. As a matter of fact, I taught the resource room, and I actually brought my students. Harriet, I don't know if you recall, I brought some of my students to the legislature, and so they could see the room with the possibility. I had some of them sit on some of the seats and encourage them to understand what government does. And I worked with Harriet Cornell for many years, and her leadership was so outstanding and really inspiring. And it was a wonderful opportunity to really make a difference in terms of, I focused on youth programs, I focused on environmental issues even then. And then after a number of years, the opportunity came up where there was an opening seat for the New York State Assembly. And I thought that would be a very interesting opportunity to run for that office. And focus mostly, I was trying to focus on a number of issues and have that dialogue about it. And even if I wasn't going to perhaps win that election, at least I would be pushing forward on issues that were absolutely essential, like the environmental issues in Rockland County, and the focus on our public schools, and jobs and things like that. And I won. That was in I think that was 2007, I think that was. And then I was, really very, very focused on the issues that we, really were dealing with in so many ways. And I now serve on the chair of the Children and Families Committee. And it really gives me wonderful opportunities. I'm on the Health Committee, the Mental Health Committee, the Environmental Committee, and the Education Committee. Issues that are so essential for our communities and our families and our youth. And so I've been able to work with my colleagues on a number of issues that we hope move forward and really provide assistance for our our children, our families. And you know, it really helps our communities too. We've been able to pass a number of really very extraordinary pieces of legislation to be able to make a huge difference. In terms of the obstacles that are in the way, very often there really are a couple of things that are problematic. So, you know, funding, you know, finding finances and funding for particular programs, and, you know, to be able to fund various systems and to be able to provide the kind of support, financial support, that would be able to be successful and really make a difference. I mean, certainly challenging. Something that I've been focusing on for several years now is the issue of childcare and programs for our children in childcare programs, and assuring that, you know, trying to push for more funding for the childcare, because it is the most underfunded system in the country, and it is absolutely essential for our families to have childcare programs in a positive way. And then, you know, that's very positive for the children being in that kind of positive environment, and the families to be able to, you know, especially the women, to go to work in a positive sense that their children are being cared for appropriately. It is something that I've continued to push for, and I've been able to get some assistance, but we still have to fight, because there has to be more funding provided by the federal government as well as the state, and that's where we have to continue to do that. And, you know, overcoming some, you know, by building coalitions with my colleagues is very, very important in the Assembly, and that's very, very helpful. Obstacles, besides the funding, of course, the Senate has been pushed back. It is a challenge to get the Senate to be able to, you know, join us in the various initiatives. And so we've been, you know, attempting to work with your colleagues and also reach out to others, as well as reaching out to the community and work with the community to understand the issues that are impacting the community, and how we can come together and focus on certain pieces of legislation or actions by the state to be able to work together to do that. And by working with the community, I've been able to, you know, accomplish certain things that have been able to really make a difference for our families and our youth. And that's something that has been very, very essential, because you can't just move forward and then, you know, fight back. You have to have the you know, the collaboration of community members and leadership in communities that will be able to help you, you know, really make a difference and be able to pass certain legislation or seek certain funding for certain issues. Some of the, I've passed such, you know, I have to tell you, I've passed such a number of pieces of legislation that really have made a huge difference. And one that has been so essential and really started out with a woman coming to me one day from another part of New York State and telling me what happened to her with the fact that she had breast density, and she had a problem because there was obviously a problem, and she had cancer, but they couldn't find it because of the situation that she had dense breast tissue. And then I did some research, and I found that had been a very real major issue in New York State among women. And so I worked with a number of our people within the legislature who actually assist, and I reached out to some medical folks, and I was able to do the breast density informed law that really was designed to improve, you know, the early breast cancer detection and prevention, requiring mammography providers to inform women to clear non-technical language if dense breast tissue is found, and to encourage the woman to have a follow-up conversation with her doctor about a history, and then get supplemental screening. And it has become a really huge issue. And there, as a matter of fact, this has been able to, this legislation, it really has made a difference, that really women being notified of the issue of breast density after they have their mammogram, that is huge. And it has been able to have, you know, women who breast cancer survivors, they become advocates too, and they are inspired by this issue, and they've actually then gone out to help and talk to others about the fact that when you have dense breast tissue, then you have to be sure to, you know, have the kind of focus and oversight that is absolutely essential, because that really is something that can be very dangerous for you. So that has been something that has made such a difference, and I can't tell you the number of women that have come to speak to me and just say thank you, because they said they didn't know. And all of a sudden, they found out they had dense breast tissue over that period of time after I passed the legislation, over about a year or two. And they actually, in a couple of them, found out that they had cancer, and they would never have known. And this saved their lives. So I've passed a number of, you know, obviously over the years, I've passed a number of really extraordinary pieces of legislation. And of course, focusing and building coalitions with my colleagues as well. It helps move forward on legislation. But for this one, I still feel in my heart how I've been able to save women's lives, and extraordinary. And I did a press conference once in Suffern regarding this issue with some women and a woman who told her story, and some physicians, and really has been an extraordinary. So it's been quite an opportunity. There have been many environmental issues that I've been focusing on since I've been on, you know, really it's something that I have been, I secured funding for a water task force in Rockland County, and Harriet would know that. You know, with the legislation regarding the well testing and the safe, you know, to assure that we have safe, affordable, sustainable water supply. I fought the proposed Suez desalination plant. I had meetings in Albany to fight that, and I was able to get my colleagues to agree to opposition, and of course, as well as relicensing Indian Point. So, you know, we need to, you know, provide strong oversight for a number of other issues impacting our communities in terms of environmental issues, something that I'm continuing to focus on and work on. I mean, I can go on and on. There are just so many things. You know, of course, one of the other very challenging but very, very important issues that I have focused on as a former teacher in East Ramapo. East Ramapo continues to be an issue that we need to, you know, work on, and we need to work together to assure that the youth are being provided with the education that they deserve, and they require, and the funding is there for that. It is something that is absolutely essential. I was able to put in a law. I created a law to create the monitor to provide the oversight of East Ramapo. And at least it's improved it a little, but we still have much challenge, and I'm still working on that with local community and Spring Valley, as well as, you know, really reaching out to the various leaders in the state. We've been able to move a little bit at a time, but things get pushed back even then. But we're still working on that. We want to assure, it is a priority to continue to assure and work on the fact that the children in East Ramapo need to have, and they should have, the quality of education that our other districts have, and they should not be pushed back because of the discrimination that is occurring, unfortunately, and the funding that is being set aside from the East Ramapo School District. You know, so it is something that is also very, very important. I can't tell you, I have so many pages of the kind of legislation I've moved forward myself, as well as working together with, you know, my other colleagues, environmental issues, as well as children and families. I have been focusing on, as chair of the Children and Families Committee, on childcare issues. As I mentioned earlier, it is something absolutely essential, and I've been working with them. We have had some improvement, but we really truly need to provide much more funding, especially at the federal level, and our state level. We need to advance the funding for our child care issues. It is so important. I've done, you know, a number of pieces of legislation for women's equality, and I've done that over the years. And assuring that more and more, like passing the Boss Bill, which I wrote, to ensure that women can make reproductive health choices without their employer having a say in it. If they want to have a decision, their own personal decision, if they're pregnant and they want to move forward without having that child, the employer cannot stop them and discriminate against them if they make their own personal decisions. And that is the result of my Boss Bill. There's too many women were really getting pushed back and losing their jobs because of their personal decisions. And that's unacceptable, and my Boss Bill stops that.
Ellen, in the interest of time, this has been amazing. If you could tell us.
I'm just going to say that in terms of encouraging women to run for office in government, to be engaged in government. I'm very fortunate. I have wonderful, wonderful staff. Rabia Nagin, my chief of staff, is extraordinary. Pascal is amazing. She also has done extraordinary work for me, and Nita. So, and Christina, who does more local. So it has been an amazing opportunity. I want to continue. There are so many issues. I could be here for the next 2 hours to talk to you about all the issues that I deal with in terms of environment and education and social justice. So that was something else I was going to talk about, and controlling taxes and gun control, which I can go on and on. There were so many issues that we need to address to be able to assure that our youth have a positive environment, that our families are safe, that women have the equality, and our seniors also need to be, they cannot be ignored. And I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for encouraging me to invite the young women, because I had a personal conversation with you back in March, and we try to encourage young women, college women, high school girls, and so forth. And of course, you are an AAUW member, so I have spoken to you at different events as well. Yeah. And next is Teresa Kenny. Teresa Kenny, and recently elected supervisor of the town of Clarkstown. Oh, excuse me, of Orangetown, I'm sorry, of Orangetown. Teresa Kenny is the first woman supervisor in the 221-year history of Rockland County. She served for 23 years as deputy town attorney. Yes. Town supervisor of the town of Orangetown.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me. I have to tell you, in light of the other speakers, I feel like the rookie here. Very much new to this whole being in government or being in politics. So in the introduction, it was pointed out that I've actually worked for the town as an attorney, so kind of behind the scenes for 23 years. So what motivated me to pursue a field in government was really not so much as what motivated me as kind of I was in the right place at the right time, or in light of what's happened since I took office, maybe I was in the wrong place at the right time. Our current supervisor at the time, Chris Day, had decided very suddenly and unexpectedly not to run for town office again. I was approached, going back to kind of some of the things that were said, I think Harriet or Ellen mentioned that they never thought about running until someone approached them, or that's what they're showing women are. That's what happened to me. I was approached, and you know, and I was a little reluctant to do it for all the reasons that most people may be reluctant to get into government. But I decided to do it because I honestly thought, with my experience, I'd be good at the job. I mean, that's what it came down to. I thought I would be good at the job. I'd been there for 23 years. I worked with four supervisors. So that, you know, day one, I could step into the job and it would be basically a seamless transition. So I don't know that there was any big, long motivation process. It was kind of, again, when this happened, I really did think, you know, I'd be best for the job. So that's kind of what motivated me. What obstacles? I have to tell you, coming into this, one of my biggest obstacles was really, I have a fear of public speaking, something I've had for a long time. And I never really thought about it because they asked me to run kind of suddenly, and I didn't stop to say, good Lord, you hate to speak in public. So I said yes, and the first time I had to give a speech, I had full-fledged anxiety. So it was very comforting for me to hear Harriet Cornell say that she had it because I listened to her speak so eloquently, and I know that there's hope. But I did two things basically to kind of solve the problem. I did hire someone to work with me, a speech coach. And then probably the thing that helped me the most is I have a daughter who's 25, who said to me at one point in time, Mom, you just need to speak from the heart and people will see you for you are and you'll be fine. And so I take that to heart, that I just do my best and I'll keep working on it. And one day I will speak as eloquently as Harriet Cornell. So that's very, it's very, very nice to hear today. My greatest accomplishment. So I'm going to guess that means your greatest professional accomplishment, because my greatest accomplishment is clearly my two children, who are 24 and 25, adults. They're not children, they're adults. What I would have to say my greatest accomplishment, and again, I just took office in January, again, pre-COVID and everything else that's gone on since, is basically being the first female town supervisor in Rockland County history. And not only being the first female town supervisor, the margin of which I won the election by was 2,600 votes, is the largest margin in over 30 years in the town of Orangetown. And it's not that I'm bragging that I won, it's not that I'm bragging that I did so well. I think during the campaign, I always just wanted to be myself. I wanted people to know who I was and what I stood for. And then I always felt they would vote for me if they liked me and thought I stood for what they stood for. And you worry during the campaign that some of your message gets lost and there's, things that get said. And so I was just happy that people saw me for who I was. I think people had said to me, you're authentic. Look, I was not out to be in politics. I don't have this desire to be a politician. It was really just, I was in a job and I thought I'd be good at the new job. And so I stood up. So I think, really that's my greatest accomplishment. It's actually very sad that I think I was almost, when they said to me, you're going to be the first woman town supervisor if you win, I was shocked. I almost didn't believe it. I said, how can that be? I mean, look, as we were talking about the women in the federal government and the state government, there's women, but locally there's still a shortage of women being in public office. So yeah, that would probably what I would say is my greatest professional accomplishment. Advice for young women looking to do a career in government. Well, I would say it's, again, my very short experience in it so far. It's certainly not for everyone, especially in this environment. I think social media has created such a difficult place for women, especially. They like to comment on our looks and our this and our that. So you have to have very thick skin. And so what I've said, and I have, like I said, I have a 25-year-old daughter who I think is thinking about politics. Be true to yourself. Stand up for what you believe in. And if you really think it's something you want to do, you should go for it, because we need more honest, hardworking women in government. So that's it. I want to thank you for having me here. It's inspiring to see all these women. And I'm open for any questions.
Good. Thank you. And I am impressed that you were elected the first town supervisor in Rockland County. That's very impressive. Yes, thank you. Donna Lightfoot Cooper. Donna Lightfoot Cooper is presently a Nyack Village Board Trustee, elected in 2016. She is also the circulation supervisor at the Nyack Library. Donna spent most of her life helping others, whether as a computer teacher at the Summit School for Girls or donating to the Rockland Family Shelter. Donna? Yes, Donna.
Good afternoon. Here I am. I'm very sorry.
Good.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank Myrna and Linda for hosting this and inviting me. What motivated me to pursue this? It's interesting, and I'm glad that.
Excuse me, Donna. We can't see you. We can see that beautiful plant.
Okay,
Okay.
here I am.
There you go. That's better.
I'm sorry. Like, it's very interesting. I was listening to Teresa. She's new. I find that I am also a newbie at all of this. Like, I'm very new and still learning things. However, I've always volunteered. I've always cared about people from a very young child. And when I was old enough to do some volunteer work, that's what I did, because I'm very interested in helping people. What motivated me, I wasn't thinking that, I want to be a politician, which I don't think of myself as, or wanting to be in public office. But there are people in my community that reached out to me and suggested or wanted me to think about getting into it. They thought that my personality, and obviously, as my mom said, you never know who's watching, and she's right. They were observing me and thought that I would be a good fit. So I kind of threw my hat in the ring, and here I am. My obstacles were coming onto, I guess I have, I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous because I have a hard time speaking in public, even though this is a Zoom meeting, so it should be a little bit easier for me. Anyway, the obstacles that I faced was being someone new, living in the community, but not knowing, coming onto a board that had already established their relationships and the people that they were with. And I was someone new, running against someone that had been there. And so, it was a little wonky, but I persevered. I think that it's important to be who you are. I knew that I care about my community, and I went for it. I felt like I was an outsider, but I just went for it. And here I am 4 years later and currently running for another term. What would I consider being my greatest accomplishment? Well, one of my biggest platforms, although I do a lot of different things, was affordable housing. Before I even became a trustee of the village, I was already talking to people and trying to help people with housing. It's a very difficult thing for many families, and of course in our area as well, with the high rents and taxes and just not enough housing. What makes me feel great and what's one of my greatest accomplishments is that I've been able to help families achieve housing, and to see the smiles on children's faces and these families that are so happy just to have a roof over their heads, that is an incredible feeling. Incredible feeling. My voice. For women that are thinking of running, I would say to them, if it's in your genes, if you care about people, go for it. Use your voice. It's an amazing feeling of accomplishment to help people and to see and to follow that through and to see the end results. I also feel that it's an accomplishment for me to be chosen to participate on this panel with a group of smart, like-minded, and incredible women that have done so much for our county, that have been real trailblazers. You all have done so much. I've been following you all for a long time. Right to you, Teresa Kenny, who is a woman, you also are a trailblazer. And I can't believe it's been so many years and there's no woman. You're the first woman in that particular position. But I might have to do some more public speaking because I do get nervous. But I just want to thank all of you for being here, taking the time to be here, and for being such amazing teachers. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. I really appreciate you doing this, and I do admire what you're doing, helping others.
Thank you.
Now we will have the question and answer session. And I would like to welcome our co-moderator, Doria Hilsman, who will be asking the questions from the chat feature.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We had just a couple of questions. Phyllis Morena asks, I guess this is to any of the panelists, as far as AAUW, what can we do to help to encourage young women and to help mentor young women in the pursuit of a career in politics? Is there anything that you can think of offhand at AAUW in terms of our resources and our mission?
I'm thinking, may I answer?
Please.
Offer one suggestion is we had in the Women's Bar Association tremendous success with our scholarship contest. And I believe that's something the AAUW and the League of Women Voters can do. And I'll be happy to help you with that. To draft a question that you want an answer to about anything political. Usually it's a theme. So I guess this year would be the ratification of the 19th Amendment. But you can make it anything you want. And then you send it to the guidance counselors of the high schools in Rockland County. And then the responses are submitted online, of course, and anonymously. And then you have a committee to award the scholarship. And then you have some kind of ceremony. And I think it encourages people, younger people. You can even do it at the college level or the law school level. I know some bar associations do it at the law school level. And then it encourages people, and then it also forms mentorship relationships. So that young person now has mentors to reach out to as she, pursues her career. So that's my suggestion.
Okay. So Phyllis will be our next committee chair on the essay committee. I see it happening already. Myrna asks specifically to Ellen. Ellen, specifically, what are you working on now for childcare and families? You're still muted.
Yeah. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I've been, working on a number of issues regarding the finances. Certainly expanding the child care the tax credit. Too many New Yorkers are raising children and struggling, keeping themselves out of poverty. And the bill expands the Empire State Child tax credit to include infants and toddlers, while doubling the tax credit for young children. So that's one thing that I would provide more assistance in financially. And then the sleep subsidy too, allow parents and caretakers who are eligible for child care assistance to use that assistance when they need care to enable them to sleep, in case the parents have to sleep. I've been working, across the state, reaching out to a number of groups, trying to work together to be able to find ways that we can get more funding from at the state level to be able to provide more assistance in terms of subsidies for families. I also have raised awareness in the community I represent primarily, but even expanded beyond that, so people would understand exactly what they need to do to be able to have access to childcare subsidies, so that they get some funding to assist them in providing their child to be able to be in childcare while they're working. That's something else that I have to continue to work on. We have to continue to provide more.
Oh, no. Okay, I'm not sure what happened to your, you went mute, Ellen.
Doria?
Yeah, she has to unmute herself.
Okay, this
I'm
is
not sure what
Harriet.
happened.
If you want an answer to your first question, you can come
Is that
back.
better now?
Yes.
For some reason, I don't know. I don't know, but I did mention about the subsidies. I don't know if you lost me at that point. But the subsidies, in terms of their ability to have access to a little more financial assistance, and also limits how much they are required to pay in terms of their income. There needs to be awareness, and there needs to be more fiscal support, so that more families would have access to subsidies to be able to ensure their children are in a positive childcare environment while they can go to work.
Right. Okay.
That the issue of subsidies is something I have really, really been focusing on to get more assistance for their economic ability, and then trying to assure that the level of their salaries would be significant to be able to then
afford it. Sure. Thank you. Harriet, you were going to respond to the first question. Thank you, Ellen.
Yes, I would like to very much, because I think that's an important one, how to encourage young people to really get involved. Just as an example, the high school students in the Nyack School District, many of them are very involved with environmental issues. And I had been invited by them to speak at least two of their, what they call climate strikes, as they call attention to climate change. And they're very, very active in that. And I always try to call attention to the fact that, you know, these are, when you have issues like that, that you really care about, that getting involved with government in some way or another is extremely important, and to begin to think in terms of beginning to encourage these young people to think in terms of their own activities, and to think how government can best help to move their particular issues forward. So I think that, you know, we see today so many young people with real interests, you know, whether it's Black Lives Matter or environmental issues, other kinds of things, that we have real opportunities to reach out to them and try to encourage them to think in terms of, if not a career for themselves in politics, because they may not be thinking about it, but the many ways that they can take their passions to people to make changes.
Sure. I just want to say, and it really is does somebody else want to speak to that before we go on?
You mentioned what
AAUW can do, yes.
Yeah. You wanted to specifically to know what, well, I mean, these are the kinds of things you can be thinking about in terms of how to reach out to young people, to get them to see that their passions are things that are so important. They're important to you, and maybe to find out from them how best to encourage that kind of activity.
Also, if they want to opportunities for any of us in government, very often we have our youth, young women in particular, come to work and assist us in their offices, and that way they begin to understand how government works and what possibilities there are. And I've had a number of young women and a couple of young men who have been working in my office, volunteering, and sometimes I'm able to give them a little support financially. And they then come and they sit and they talk to me about what they never understood and what they didn't realize about government and what government does. And they begin to become inspired. And a couple of them, a number of them talk about maybe they'll move forward and get more engaged. Not necessarily mean they're running for office, all of them, but to be engaged with government. And some of them say they are, it's something they might consider. But that's something that we can, offer as a suggestion for our youth. Do you want to just have an idea of how government works? Go volunteer.
Sure.
Yeah, also,
Internships.
I contacted one of the young women who was part of that high school group. She's now in college. And I sent her information about the county program in the summer called the Environmental Corps, where the students work in some department of either county government, town government, whatever, and they get paid for it. It's a summer job. And they recently had a program where they had asked me to speak. I mean, they're just they learn that way about how there's so many ways in which they can take their own passion, their interest, in this case, the environment, and they have real options as to where they work, whether they work in the county, in a department that deals with planning, having to do with environmental planning, or if they actually go out in the field and they help to build something that's, so there are a lot of opportunities, and maybe the AAUW would like to know more about the opportunities that are available, and that will give you some ideas as to how to move forward.
Absolutely. I just want to, we didn't really get too many questions, but I just want to say a kind of a common theme that I've heard from a lot of our panelists this afternoon is this whole thing about being asked. And being asked is really a very girly thing. We're asked to dance, where we wait to ask to be married. In corporate life, we do these things to make ourselves more attractive, whether it's getting more degrees or more experience in order to be asked. Having been asked, as many of you were, I'm just curious as to whether or not you have any regrets. Connie, if you could maybe speak to that. Do any of you have any regrets about having said yes when you were asked?
That's a very good question, Daria. Reminds me of that TV program that comes on Channel 28, Say Yes to the Dress. Every day you think one thing, and then my mom used to tell me all the time, if something seems kind of natty and difficult, go to sleep on it, and when you get up the next day, you'll have a clear mind. And I've usually pretty much operated like that. When asked, if I felt that I could make a difference, I would always say yes. When asked, if I did not feel that I had the skill set or the acumen to do what was asked of me, I just might say no. But for most of us and most women, we are usually, we take on a lot of different kinds of things. We just have always done that. And that's, the women are the backbone of this country. When I don't think Harriet Tubman was asked, she said, come on, and if you make a noise, I'm gonna shoot you. And the same thing is true with Sojourner Truth. She said, ain't I a woman? So when asked, I think that you have to look at the total picture, the gestalt, to determine whether, do you think this is a good fit for me? Do you think I can make a difference? And if you can answer those two questions as yes, then I say, do it.
Good. Anyone else like to respond to that?
I have no regrets for having said yes at all to that first request to run for office. I didn't think, of course, that I would be doing it for over 36 years at this point. Had no idea it would turn into basically a career. But I think as Ellen said and others have said, the ability to make a difference in people's lives is really what motivates me. And it certainly hasn't been about being paid a lot for working. You do it really out of a sense of love for what you're doing and being able to make a difference in people's lives, and that's really what counts. So, yeah.
I have no regrets. I was very nervous in the beginning, but again, that has been said before, you know, if I felt like I wasn't making a difference or then I would no longer do it. But in doing it, I have grown considerably. I continue to learn, and it's given me another platform in which to help people. So I absolutely have no regrets.
Okay, thank you all for your thorough and thoughtful answers. All right, Myrna.
Yes, thank you all for participating in our panel. You have all made an impact on issues that further women's equality and concerns, just as the original trailblazers who fought for women's right to vote. As active women in public service, your contributions have done so much for our county, state, and country. You have worked tirelessly to resolve issues that concern women, such as childcare, education, and pay equity. We all owe you a debt of gratitude.
Myrna, may I make a little statement about Suffrage Forward for people?
Sure.
Yeah. Yes, and Linda, thank you for starting this program, talking about the importance of suffrage and a little bit of the history. But I've been working for well over a year with a small group, a steering committee, and which is called Suffrage Forward. And this particular event today will be on our website very soon because it's been filmed. What we have done because of the pandemic, many of the in-person kinds of events that had been planned to highlight the importance of the women's suffrage 100th year anniversary really has had to take place in a virtual way. So we have now have 2 videos on our Suffrage Forward website. So the website address is www.suffrageforward, all one word, suffrageforward.org, O-R-G. And the videos that we have done are they're really wonderful. They really are wonderful. And each one is a little less than an hour, and they're on the website, so you can go at your leisure and take a look and see what is there. But the first one, we call it the Power of Persistence. It's a series called The Power of Persistence. And number 1 and number 2 programs are both online now. They both appeared. And we have a 3rd one coming up. So the first one, for example, has a number of Rockland people in it. It also has Gloria Steinem, and it ends with Geraldine Ferraro, a film that I'm friendly with her daughter. I think I mentioned earlier, part of the Eleanor Roosevelt Legacy group that helps to train women who run for office. Geraldine Ferraro's daughter, Donna, is a filmmaker and had done a film about her mother. So we have used a piece of that film, which is very touching and really quite something. It was towards the end of Geraldine's life. And Linda had mentioned that Frances Pratt was in the 2nd program. I actually wrote that piece about C.J. Walker, Madam C.J. Walker, who was born into a large family, all of whom had been enslaved, except that when she was born, it was just after the Emancipation Proclamation. But she went from being a poor person growing up with all the issues of slavery all around her, and became very, very wealthy. But more than that was the kind of person she became, because she actually so philanthropic and taught so many of her workers as she developed her own business. She trained them and really taught them about saving, budgeting, and also being very willing to give money to their own communities and charity. And she was extremely charitable herself. So there's a lot of interesting things there. So I do encourage people to go any time of the day or night now to that website, and you can see the first two editions of our Suffrage Forward videos, and I think you'll enjoy them all and learn a lot.
I just want to do something that very brief, but another issue that perhaps we can come together and talk about at another time is the issue of standing up for social justice. You know, issues for LGBT, equity issues, to fight for that, for criminal justice reform, for immigration rights, equal opportunity for all. That's a major issue. Standing up for social justice, and there are a number of issues that are engaged with that concept. But perhaps we can meet again as we move forward and have a conversation about that, because I think that is essential for our communities. There's too much prejudice and too many things going on that we need to really discuss that. We have many pieces of legislation we have been pushing for. I am co-sponsor and sponsor of some of the legislation. We need to turn our social justice system in a much more positive direction.
Thank you.
And Constance Frazier has been a leader with the Human Rights Commission in trying to do that, bringing people together. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And now we'll hear from, I'd introduce you to our AAUW's President, Susan Mercer Young, who will speak about our organization, AAUW, and its goals and its mission.
Thank you, Myrna. So I'm Suzanne Young Mercer, and and I want to thank all our panelists, because it's always refreshing to hear from our government those women who have chosen a life in public service, because it shows, as Constance says, too much is given, much is expected. And that's how we move ourselves along. And to Larraine, Feiden, who I was like, yes, I really want to get on board with you, because amendments and changing the Constitution is how we get us, get us to where we need to be. Because yes, each time we change government leadership, things will change with them. And so we need to put stuff in place that's going to almost stay permanent, because things have changed that we thought were permanent. So we have to work hard on that. But I want to thank everybody, Harriet, Cornell, who has been, a Rockland staple in our community, and has, just shown us what women can and will do over the course of 36 years. And Ellen Jaffee, who another, great person who's done wonderful things for the county, for the school district. She's always there. If you want something, you can go to Ellen and she's going to get it for you. Constance and Teresa and Donna, I really appreciate all that you said and for how you participated today. So, my purpose is to tell you about AAUW and the fact that AAUW's been around. Let me just sort of say, we have our president of AAUW, New York State president, was on for a while. I was looking through and I think she had to drop off. And our vice president of development has also been a participant in the program. And I want to thank them both for stopping in and supporting the branch today. But AAUW has been around since 1881, breaking down barriers for women in education, in the workplace, and in our communities, locally, regionally, nationally, and globally. Our founders refused to accept the status quo and demanded access for women at every level of our society. Today, AAUW is 170,000 valued members and supporters, staff, and stakeholders celebrate and reflect on the organization's rich past and meaningful impact to ensure our future relevance in advancing equity for all women and girls. In Rockland, we have been collaborating with like-minded organizations like the League of Women Voters. Linda has always been, and we seem to collaborate a lot with you know, doing things with forums for candidates and things. So collaboration is what we try to do, and bringing relevant programs such as today's presentation to women and girls in our community. So our mission is to advance gender equity for women and girls through research, education, advocacy, and our vision is equity for all. So for those of you who have attended today's session, who are like-minded and who are not members of AAUW, I encourage you and invite you to join AAUW Rockland, and you can fill out an application by logging onto our website at rocklandcounty-ny.aauw.net.
Okay.
Doria had, so I want to pass it back. And
yes.
In actuality, there is also AAUW National has presentations, webinars, free webinars, most, you know, it seems like just about every week, but this coming Tuesday, August 25th at 3 p.m., there's a Policy versus Practice 1920 to Present, Continuing the Fight for Equity. That's going to be a webinar that's free to you if you want to log into aauw.org. You can watch it there.
Thank you, Suzanne. This concludes our program, and I would like to thank Linda Burns, President of the Rockland chapter of LWV, League of Women Voters, and I would also like to thank the women on my planning committee, Betty Balone, Karen Martin, Anita Nesson, Sandy Mazziello, Elder Graff, and especially Doria Hillsman, our co-moderator who conducted the technical aspects of our Zoom meeting. And I would also like to inform you that the local radio station, HSRC, is broadcasting a program celebrating the 100th anniversary of the League of Women Voters this Monday, August 17th at 9:30. Or you can access it from by going wrcr.com. But and to conclude, stay safe and take care of each other, and remember to vote on or before November 3rd. Thank you.
Members, don't leave. We have an installation. We still have business to conduct. So if you're a member, please do stay on. We have a couple more minutes left for business to conduct. We have installation of our members, which is going to be carried on by our president, Suzanne Young Mercer.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to leave, but I just wanted to mention, because of the large number of ballots that are going to be done by mail, it's the best to do it sooner rather than later in order to be sure that votes get counted.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to leave now and look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Harriet.
Thank you, Harriet.
Okay. All right, Suzanne, if you want to continue.
All right. So I need Elza and April Biggs. Yes? Are Elza and April on?
Elda is on. I don't see April.
He was on earlier. Okay, so Elza. Is Elder unmuted?
Am I unmuted? Just thank you all so much. I really am so appreciated with the conversation.
Thank you.
You bet. I have to go. I have a couple of calls that came in. Now I have to respond to them.
Okay, Ellen, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. Thank you.
So Elder.
Okay,
Wait.
you're okay. Talk.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, Elder, I can hear you now.
Okay.
All right, so as membership vice president, you have the responsibility of nurturing membership growth with AAUW Rockland. You are charged with encouraging members to reach out to their communities to build AAUW membership. You will remind members that every AAUW member is a member of the membership committee team. You are responsible for communicating with members at large and student affiliates to link them to branches and the state organizations. A vibrant and growing membership is our link to the future. Let our membership growth reflect the diversity of AAUW champions. Strive to have AAUW, I'm sorry, what happened? I'm sorry. Strive to have AAUW Rockland branch reflect AAUW's commitment to building a diverse membership. Do you accept the responsibilities of Office of Membership Vice President?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. And April's not on, so I can't do her.
I'm surprised she's not on.
She was on. I saw her before, but she must have.
Yeah, I just texted her and she says she's at an appointment. So I guess we'll have to get her another time.
We'll have to get her another time. All right, so.
Next meeting, yeah.
Okay, so having done that, you are duly, I declare that you are duly sworn in as the chair of the vice president.